On this episode, we talk with our good friend Justin Mullett.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMott and Andy Lehman.
Andy.
Joel.
Hey, we've made it through Snowmageddon here.
We survived.
We did. The great Hoosier State did receive a little bit of a dump. We've gotten through it. I went sledding with the boys this afternoon.
Awesome.
It was wonderful. But here's the deal, Andy. I'm just full disclosure, and I'm not going to name names. One of my kids has a fear of sledding.
What?
Yeah.
Older or younger? I mean, I'm just in which range? Okay, I gotcha. All right, cool.
Fear of sledding, and now that this has been revealed to me, I feel like I've got work to do. Okay, we've got to.
You got to teach him how to not be.
He did go down a few times, but it was just there was a clear hesitation, and I feel like when you and I were kids, you saw a hill, you saw snow,
you went up it. It was like a ramp, and you
were like looking for maximum speed, maximum air, the whole thing. So we've got a little bit of work to do, but it was a good outing today, and it wasn't minus 5 degrees around here either.
Right. So
super good. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. Andy, what's going on, man?
Oh man, I'm just gonna say it's been nice having off. I had off I don't want to say off as I was working, but
you were working remotely.
I was working remotely, so it was nice to be able to hang out with the family. So Wednesday through Friday. Well, I was back to work Friday, so it was just Wednesday and Thursday. But
did you do any board games together?
No, I was working.
Oh wow. Well, I'm just saying, here's what I find. Outside of the work day, I do find that when we have those days in, we're more.
Oh, I got you. Like in the evening,
right? Like we're more focused on hey, let's do an activity or something.
Sure,
together.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, I do have a dream someday that we'll be able to do. This sounds super old, and for those of you that are puzzle fans, I mean no disrespect, but I'd like to get us into some puzzle making. But
making the puzzles.
Puzzle building, puzzle putting together? I don't know what is
doing a puzzle.
Doing a puzzle, is that the language? For those of you puzzle enthusiasts, if I'm using the incorrect language and you need to write in
feedback at Dudes and
Dads Podcast. Oh well, hey Andy, before we get any farther, let's remind everybody about our key sponsor, our good friend, The Concrete Barber, located right here in Goshen, Indiana. Head over to concretebarber.com to schedule an appointment. Get yourself some delicious hair products.
My boys are going this week.
10-4. I'm fresh off the beard trim. I don't know if you've noticed or not. Andy is ready for the beard trim. How much farther can you push that bad boy before Julie said something?
I need to go.
Yeah, Julie has said that. Thank you, Julie. The woman has her limits. So, hey, concretebarber.com. And when you do, as so many of you have done, when you head over there, tell DJ that the Dudes and Dads podcast sent you over. Andy and Joel sent you over. I'm about ready to. I've got some delightful Samson's the beard wax. This is the first time I've tried this brand. It's going in tomorrow morning. I'll give you a full report.
I can't wait. I'll do it on Instagram. Give us on the story.
Thank you. I will.
Right.
I will cross promote. It'll be fantastic.
Also, I want to remind you that this episode is also sponsored by you. Our patrons, our wonderful supporters. You can go to patreon.com/Dudes and Dads Podcast and get extra behind the scenes stuff, extra shows, early releases sometimes,
and secret recipes.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Joel, after our last episode, we had somebody actually hit us up on Twitter and ask our last guest, or if you remember, last guest was Kent Miller, and he was talking about
Is Twitter
budgeting.
Still a thing?
It is. We actually have a Twitter presence, by the way.
I love it. I love it.
Dad's Dudes. It's backwards on Twitter, but Justin on Twitter commented a few things, and so I reached out to Kent and actually asked him the questions to respond to us. So Kent got back to us. So
because we had Kent on the last episode.
Yes, we did.
Talk to us about budgeting. and people heard the episode
And had questions.
which we love this.
So if you guys have any questions about our
so
feedback,
good.
you can hit us up on any of our social medias or feedback at Dudes and Dads Podcast or 574-213-8702 is our voicemail number.
Voicemail number. And as we like to always say, that just goes right to voicemail.
Yeah,
Neither
absolutely.
Andy nor I will pick up in the dead of night. If maybe it's like 2 a.m. and you're like, I have nothing else to do. I'm going to call the Dudes and Dads voicemail.
Yeah.
Feel free, because
Yeah, do
we won't know right away at least. Anyway.
Anyway, so Justin's first question is, how old should children be to start to work and save?
Well, I'm a big fan of children kind of doing chores and helping around the house. I don't know that there's a specific age, but it seems to me that when a child can begin kind of taking on the task, for example, cleaning up their toys or their room, that's great to have them do that. Now, many families consider that kind of part of the child's contribution to family living. And in that context, I think that's great. I don't necessarily give them an allowance or pay them for that work. And for that work specifically, I think that's great, and to have those kind of things identified. However, when you're giving a child an allowance, it's a wonderful way to start kind of teaching stewardship techniques like saving, giving, spending within your means. And each child may be a little different, but I think the earlier you can begin teaching those concepts, the stronger that they'll kind of take root and reside in a child's life.
That's awesome. Thanks for that response, Kent. The next question that Justin had was, what percent of net worth should your house represent? So what percent of your net worth should your house represent?
That's a really informed question, by the way.
So
well done.
So here's the answer.
Well, we tend to talk about the percentage of your house payment in relation to your income, and so roughly 25 to 30% at most. But, it's also in relationship to your debt and considering payments, school loans, credit cards, that kind of thing. And that shouldn't total more than 40%. And so for many people, especially early in their house buying career and even beyond, the house that they're buying will often represent a large portion of their overall worth. So net worth. So if you're just starting out buying a house, you probably, very likely have a high mortgage. And so your actual net worth from that house might not be real large, but that will grow and probably represent a larger portion of that. I don't know that there's an ideal number to shoot for as a percentage of that. As you get older, and if you've worked at saving and building up retirement savings, those kind of things, that housing amount, that percentage might actually go down in terms of the overall net worth. And again, it's kind of each one is an individual case. But we tend to start more at related to income, your payment, and related to your overall debt.
And then the last question is, why the social pressure to pay for your children's college?
Yeah, this is an excellent question. And I think there are multiple sources that contribute to this feeling. So one of them is, as college education has become more required in many jobs, along with the increasing price of education, parents are often the ones who are tapped to either co-sign loans or take out parent loans. We got caught in that when we were doing it for our oldest daughter. And it's just in order for the college to be paid for. The FAFSA is an application for student aid. And if you haven't gotten into that yet, you don't have children at that age, they're going to look at a parent's income and they calculate how much parents can contribute. And again, I put all that in quotes because they're just treating this as if the parent is going to do this towards the cost of education. So this assumption, it's kind of built into the whole student aid formula. The third reason can be that many families over the years have wanted to pay for at least a portion of the child's college education. So I think there can be some assumptions that everyone wants or can afford to do that, and that's not always the case. In our own experience, we were able to help with the first year of college, but anything beyond that was up to our daughter's expense. And so that way they're learning kind of to take responsibility for the money that's being invested in their education. So this in part had to do with our financial situation, but also I wanted them to invest in themselves as well.
Well, thank you, Kent, for responding to that, and thank you, Justin, for asking those very, very awesome questions to our guest.
Yeah, that whole thing right there, it's fantastic, and I absolutely love that. And we always want to encourage. Anytime you've got a question or feedback or anything, send it our way. Because if nothing else, it helps eat up some great show time. Gives us some content, if we're lacking.
So the other piece of feedback that we had was from Dave Jones from the Podcast Index, and he commented via a Boostagram. So Boostagram is if you're listening on a new podcast app, newpodcastapps.com, like you can send us parts of Bitcoin. And so and messages together. And so he sent us a Boostagram, and it says, "I remember setup and teardown when I played the drums in church every Sunday morning for years." So
he feels our pain.
And that was about our last episode when we were talking about how much we used to hate tearing down this studio every time we were done recording.
We're so grateful for the sense of permanence of a place.
Absolutely.
Of a place to belong. Excellent. Well, hey, without further ado, because he's been sitting now for approximately 11 minutes waiting, we do want to welcome...
Let's bring him into the studio, and we'll just shut the door behind him.
Oh, wow.
All right. He's here.
Guys, I really wish you could see all the buttons that Andy has been pushing over the last few minutes. It's pretty amazing. We have Justin Mullett in, and like we always say, we want our friends to be your friends. We want to share the life stories, the experiences of our friends with you. So tonight is no exception. Justin, welcome to the show, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Golly, guys, you're gonna see a photo. Justin is also a fellow beard enthusiast, which is beards are not a prerequisite, but they are highly recommended. So if you're considering being on this show in the future,
you should grow one because we might consider you
the stick. Absolutely. In fact, Andy, who has been on our show recently that does not have a beard? I think I'm exactly. I can't think of anyone. I feel like maybe subconsciously we are prone toward fellow beard enthusiast. I'm just now making this connection. So Justin was like, I thought I came on my own merits. Nope. Just because you had the beard, that was all it took. Justin, so just a little bit of a context, a little backstory, Andy, if I can. So Justin and his wife Manessa, who you're going to hear about in just a little bit, and Manessa's a little bit under the weather still, and so we wanted to send out our prayers and well wishes to Manessa. She
gets better.
She gets better. It's not like she's on her deathbed, but she's been a little under the weather, and so we want to, Manessa, if you're listening, we hope by the time this show hits your ears that you've received a full healing. But Justin and Manessa attend Wakarusa Missionary Church, where I pastor. Manessa is a licensed therapist within our community. For a time shared space at our church, we had an office spot set up for her there. She has now moved to just across the street, so we're very, very fortunate that she is still...
she didn't move far, but
she didn't move far, but she's got a little more space. The thing that we're very, very excited about, and this is what I appreciate, Manessa has a passion for art therapy, specifically working with families and kids. And I was like roughly familiar with the discipline, but as I've just gotten to know more, I've been like, this is amazing. It is what our community needs. All of you listening, you've heard how much we've talked about on this show, talked about it elsewhere, just the mental health needs that are out there. And we really believe also as Jesus followers that we are able to offer a specific perspective and a hope and a help through all of it. So that I've connected with Manessa that way, obviously their family being at the congregation and being really what we consider part of our team. And we like Manessa a whole lot. And turns out that her husband's just a fantastic guy. And but here's how Justin nailed the show. Here's how it all
not
happened.
The beard.
I'm just gonna. I mean, it helps.
Truth be told, I've only been growing this out for a month since I heard about the show.
That's a solid.
Right.
Hey,
if that's a month growth, that's impressive.
Good. Yeah.
That's very impressive.
I had some background. Yeah,
that's so good. Manessa and I were sitting in one of our other pastors' offices a few weeks ago, and Manessa says to me, "Justin's thinking about he's never had a hobby, and he's thinking about starting a hobby. And I go,
Well, I think I would just to correct that, I've never had a healthy hobby.
okay,
Oh,
bingo.
okay.
Yeah,
bingo.
let's just be accurate. Yeah.
Bingo. Okay, fantastic. I don't know. I think podcasting is mostly a healthy hobby for us, mostly. But she says he's really interested in the podcast world. I said, say no more. I texted him right then and there. I said, hey, I want you on the show. Come hang out with us. At least, number one, he's gotten to see behind the scenes. Before we started the show, we've run through all the gear. We've showed him everything.
Oh, yeah.
He's basically, he's going to launch the show in a matter of weeks. I can just tell. It's going to happen. As long as he can, I don't know, write it off. No. So but apart from that, okay, so that's like all joking aside. What I appreciate about Justin and his family is just the story of how they came to be a family. Let's
let him start with the dad stats.
Thank you.
Let's do it.
Thank you for just say, Joel, get on with it.
Dad stats. We want to hear your dad stats.
Tell us about the family, how long you've been married, and any other details that you just think would make the show extra juicy. I don't know.
Extra juicy, huh? Okay.
Yeah, juicy.
Starburst style, huh?
Yeah.
All right. So we got married in May 24th to be exact, of 2019. I'll tell you a quick funny story about that.
Yes.
So this was Memorial Day weekend, right? I took the Friday off. We went to the courthouse. We got married. We closed on her house. We closed on our house, and we started moving.
Wow.
And we utilized that entire weekend to move and paint.
Master of efficiency here.
Well, that's her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just along for the ride. That is her. She is very motivated, very driven, and very much about efficiency. And
So good.
so if I'm smart, I go
Love
along with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have one son, Lucas, who I adopted shortly after we were married, which was always the intention. That was something that we discussed beforehand anyhow. So yeah, that's us. We moved into this house and we went right to work. Let's see, within the first, was it that winter? It might have been that same winter that we gutted the kitchen and remodeled it because she was not happy with that kitchen.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did you do anything to the outside of the house? I'm going to tell you why I asked, because today in church, straight up, true story, in our small group, which they're part of our Sunday morning small group right now, we shared where everyone lives, their actual location of their house. And because I'm going to have them tell me about this. So they go, because they were out today, they go, does anybody know where the Mullets live? And I was like, I do. I know where the Mullets live. And I'm giving like a rough, like they're they're on this side of the road and whatever. I said, or if you've been driving into Waukee and have seen a house with a hose coming out and dumping water into the road, and everyone, and I'm not even kidding you, Justin, everyone's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. So because you've had some recent basement troubles.
Well, I'm not sure how you would term this. We have recently had some water issues, but it was not only recent.
Gotcha.
Well, this has been kind of an ongoing
long-standing battle.
Yeah,
yes,
indeed.
yes. So the whole house, the thing is, if you really want to cement, and Andy, you know that we've all been in our housing situation. If you want to cement the health or unhealth of your marriage, redoing a house,
It could be stressful.
Let alone purchasing a house.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
If you want to see how your marriage is going to work out, I think that's a good place to start. Absolutely.
Jackie and I when we bought a foreclosure back in 2008, and it was our first home. We had a real rocky start, but I will say we came out on the other side better for it. And I also learned that my wife, I think she could dabble in part-time electrician work. I really do. She's pretty.
That's good to know.
Pretty handy. Okay, so you guys have been married a few years. How old is Lucas, by the way?
Lucas is 12.
12 years old, which I know all about the 12-year-old vibe right now.
12-year-olds can be tough.
12-year-olds can be tough.
Right now, it's
Reagan.
kind of fun.
Is Reagan?
Not.
Is she?
You always do this
is
to
she
me.
12?
Put me on the spot for my kids' ages.
Close.
Yeah.
Because she's close to Aaron's age. So yeah, I've got a 12-year-old right now. The the storm is a brewing. Our boys, Aaron listens to the show, so I'm gonna be gentle, but I'm just gonna say, I'm starting to get this sense that I don't know what emotional state I'm going to be encountering on a given day. That's my current observation.
They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
You know what, and that feels right. I was an emotional roller coaster probably beginning about that age. So, okay, so you guys get married. So, and let's give some context. So, Justin, how old are you, Justin?
He said, I haven't. Nobody's asked me that in a long time. Yeah. Hold on, I gotta do something. Let me pull up my calculator real quick. So if this is, I will be this year. I will be 37.
Yes.
Yes, this March.
Nice.
Yes.
Good. You see I understand the feeling. You're on the downward slope of your 30s, and yet you seem pretty upbeat about it. So I'm happy to see that. Tell us. So obviously you're getting married. You and Manessa get married. You're well into your 30s.
Well, 34.
That's well into the 30s.
You're well established into your 30s.
31 is like at the corner.
This is me projecting. Can you tell? So here, I would just love for you just to tell the story of kind of your guys' relationship. Because we have a lot of listeners, friends, close people, like I said before the show, where, Andy and I often feel like, we have such a stereotypical, it's kind of like married younger, like we're like just almost out of college or whatever, married younger, these two dumb kids who just loved each other and just loved Jesus and just want to go. And
we could just say we were not well into our 30s when we got married.
100%. And that's like the stereotypical story. And that was the story for many of the people that, are my friends and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And yet that's not the way, it's so often not the way it goes. That is not the story. There's been my other family members and things like it is, would have different experiences than my own. Tell us, share with us kind of the journey of,
what was I thinking?
What were you thinking? That's the,
let's just be honest.
Yeah. What were, because it seems like, if I can just say it feels like a little bit of a gamble.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So like paint the picture for us, man.
Well, where do I start? So, we met in the summer of 2017. We dated for a few years. It's kind of rocky, off and on. Here's the thing. When you decide to be in a serious relationship, quote unquote, well into your 30s, there's a lot of changes coming, bud. And you got to be...
Sure. I mean, you're like established already.
I am an established bachelor. Yeah. Right. And a lot of things established, some much worse than bachelor at that point. But, I avoided church. It's not that I didn't believe in God or Jesus. I just kind of decided I wasn't ready for a long, long time. And when I met Manessa, she had been going, so she had moved back from Colorado to be closer to family. And she had started going to Sugar Grove Church. And I'd been invited there. My brother and his wife went there years and years ago. I'd been there. Anyhow, long story short, I ended up going a few times, and a guy that I worked with at a construction company was going there, and we kind of made a connection. And so I started getting to know him, and it's just funny. I want to just reference this guy, Bill Marvel. Amazing man of God.
With a last name like that, I can only imagine.
He is marvelous.
Marvelous.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
No, he was, I think he was born into the name. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
But this guy was a mentor of mine in my walk with Christ. And he was pivotal. It was absolutely pivotal in what transpired between Manessa and I. Because the way that I was doing things was still very bachelor-like, very selfish, very manipulative, very about me. So anyhow, we went through some periods. That's a whole other podcast. But we got through them, and honestly, there wasn't much doubt within the first year of us dating that I wanted to marry this woman. And yeah, people always, people have grand stories. It's kind of like my acceptance of Jesus into my heart. I wish it was something grand and spectacular.
Sure,
It wasn't. But I mean, what happened after that was grand and spectacular. But the event itself, not so much. But, people always want to know, like, well, how did you know you wanted to marry your wife and why? And it's like deer in headlights and crickets, because I don't really know. It felt like a prompting from the Lord. It just felt like it was a thing for me to do, like it was part of my purpose. And I don't know what. I had no idea.
And I just have to imagine. So Manessa was in a previous relationship. She's obviously, you're coming into this relationship with a child, and those. I know for many men that's a cause for hesitation or for like, what am I getting myself into? Because it's like, obviously you adopted Lucas early on there, and you're becoming a father without the experience of birth, early childhood,
everything that goes along with it.
All of that. What was that? I just can't, like, that's an amazing thing in and of itself.
When you were a kid and the pool was 35 degrees, but you jumped in anyhow, it's kind of like that. Yeah. I mean, no dipping of the toes, none of that business, just jumping right in. And it's shocking, to say the least. And it's funny that you bring that up, because as I was kind of reminiscing about our marriage and our journey, that's one thing that I kind of always go back to is, it's funny because I kind of went from like nomadic surfer dude, kind of it's all good, to drill sergeant very quickly on the turn of a dime. And I don't know what it was exactly. It's something that we kind of had to work through, very much had to work through and figure out. And it had to have been something on a subconscious level, because I don't understand. I didn't wake up one morning and say, well, I'm a husband and a father, so it's time to get this place, in ship shape, and we're going to make this happen. It just kind of happened, and I didn't realize it was going on. And so it was a shock. It was a shock subconsciously. It was a shock consciously. And it was a shock to my way of living. Now, that being said, we did, I kind of had a little break-in period as we were dating. I didn't meet Lucas for a while. Okay. Because as we dated, she's kind of like, right. I don't know about this guy.
So when you guys first started dating, though, did she tell you that she had a child?
Absolutely, okay. Yeah. Right. So funny story. We actually met when she had Lucas with her. We went to a good friend that ended up being a mutual friend. She went to high school with this guy. When I was 15, I washed dishes in the kitchen, and he was the kitchen manager. He was the head guy. So I knew him through that. She went to school with him. They were actually really close friends. So I'd been going to this 4th of July party in this neighborhood at his mom's house for, 4 years or something like that already. And I'd seen her there before, but never really did anything. But it's funny because I was the guy that was taking, a 12 or 18 pack of beers and wondering, is this going to be enough? And among other things, before that time, that year, and again, that could be a whole other episode, but things that had transpired had led me to, and this is before, mind you, I'd accepted Christ. I had decided, you know what? I'd cut some things out of my life already, and I decided, you know what? I think I'm going to take like 4 beers and just see how that goes, and just take it easy, because this is kind of an all-afternoon event. There's a cornhole tournament, so you're talking, a 5 to 6 hour ordeal. Anyhow, so I did that, and I was sober, and it was funny because then I saw this woman and her child, and I thought, I think I want to be a dad. No, not really. No, anyhow, so she was also had some mutual acquaintances with some other very close, very good friends of mine. And so we were kind of in the same circle. We started talking. So right off the bat, I knew she had a kid. And that wasn't really not at all. And I know that probably sounds strange, and I'm sure it's the anomaly, but that wasn't really a deal breaker for me. It didn't bother me that much. So no, that was
Awesome. Yeah.
Did you see yourself ever getting married, or was it just like, nah?
Yeah, I did. It's fun. I did. So I always, I was never good at relationships, but I was never a one night stand kind of guy.
Sure.
Even before my relationship with Christ, it just didn't feel right. So I always wanted a relationship. The thing I didn't realize is that relationships actually take work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, like you have to invest into them.
Turns out.
Yeah. Funny, isn't it? So, but I did, I longed to have, my brother and his wife, they have a great, marriage, a great relationship. Now it doesn't mean that they always get along, because my brother's a man, so he does, he does
man dude stuff. Yeah,
but he's an awesome guy, and his wife is amazing. And they just like, for me, they were kind of the epitome of what I wanted someday. Right. And so, yeah, I longed for that. I desired that. Absolutely. But to be honest with you, shortly before I met Manessa, I kind of decided, like, you know what? Maybe I'm supposed to be like Paul,
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just going to be single forever. And maybe I have to accept that. But the funny thing is it's kind of like, what kind of metaphor or analogy would I use for this? It's kind of like getting upset with your car for not running, but you're not putting any gas in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of upset about just, like, man, what's going to happen? Something's got to give. And there was a lot of things in my own life that were really contributing to the situation I was in.
So you start dating Manessa. Lucas is, and I mean, rightfully so. Like, obviously she's not, I was going to say exposing Lucas, not like it's like a fury, a tidal wave that did not be exposed to, but like she's holding him back because it's obviously for a kid. It can be.
That's a lot of, for a kid.
Why introduce somebody that you don't know anything? You don't know enough about them. You don't know if it's going to last. It's kind of like, why bring somebody else into this kid's life for a short period of time if he's just going to be a letdown?
Mm-hmm. What was the threshold for Manessa when she said, like, okay, Lucas, it's time for you, it's time for Justin and Lucas to meet? Like, was there can you point to anything specifically?
It kind of happened. It was kind of happenstance. So, for the first few times, we went out on our first date. His grandparents were watching him. Other times that we hung out, grandparents probably watch him, or neighbors. They were really tight knit, her and her neighbors, so they would probably have him come over and hang out. So we didn't do a lot at her house, right? And as she got to know me and I got to know her and she started to trust me a little bit, I think we were just kind of hanging out on the couch talking and just hanging out. And I think he was over at one of the neighbors' house playing, and he just came home and he walks in the door and he sees this guy and he's like,
yeah,
hello, dude in my house.
Yeah. He's like, Mom, do I need to get the baseball bat? And she said, oh, and so she kind of introduced, and I know that wasn't her intention, because I don't think that she was going to make that introduction at that point, but it just kind of happened. And I think she kind of realized, like, oh, okay, that was awkward. But now they've met. And so gradually, I think it was just more a matter of, like, can I trust this guy? Is he somebody that I can see maybe being around for a while? Is he somebody I could trust around my kid?
Yeah, absolutely. How long did it take for him to kind of open up to you? Was that an instant thing, or was that take a while?
It was actually really organic. It was really fast. So I'm trying to think. So we just kind of started doing things together off and on. She, at the time, was doing like horseback riding lessons. And she said, hey, I'm going to go do these lessons. Usually Lucas hangs out, or he goes and hangs out with my parents. Do you want to go and just hang out with him? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So we just kind of hung out and had fun, and it was really enjoyable. I have a nephew. My sister, I only have nieces from her, which they're all awesome and beautiful. But it was fun hanging out with another boy because I like hanging out with Dylan. No offense against girls, but guys kind of have
yeah, we get it.
So it's just more natural. It's more organic. You don't have to be as careful about.
Well, and you're
things,
right. You're not second. Like I'm frequently when around with girls. It's like I'm frequently like, okay, if I were a little boy, because I've had the experience of being a little boy. It's like I know that I would be into this. I would be enjoying this thing or like whatever.
Whereas if it's a girl,
it's like man, maybe I'm missing the mark here. I don't know, but.
So it worked out really well. We kind of just walked around the farm and hung out and just talked about stuff. And it was like the next time I saw him, he's like, "Hey, let me show you this, this Lego thing, And I'm like, "Oh, cool. I used to build Legos."
Like I'm in.
Yeah. I'm like, "Yeah, let's check it out, dude." And it just was really, it was just, it's just amazing. It's like, like we knew each other for a really long time. Like it was like we hadn't just met, and we kind of just gelled really easy, really quick. So
that's a really fortunate.
Well, it was probably the beard
thing.
I'm sure that.
See? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go.
That's a callback.
So what kind of counsel were you receiving? I mean, because I just look kind of taking a step back and look at the picture. I know from Vanessa's own story that like her faith journey is new and is fresh, as is yours. I mean, you're walking into kind of a new level of discipleship, taking ownership of faith, asking some really key questions about where you stand in life. You're looking at this marriage, subsequent adoption. That's a lot. That's a lot, really. I mean, and maybe you didn't, I don't know how you experienced it at that time, or if it was like, if it ever felt a little bit overwhelming or not.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I remember, so at one point, it's funny. So I'd had background with church. I'd had background knowing about Jesus, about God, and about, the difference is, and in everybody else's defense, I probably wasn't paying attention. But I don't know if it's that I'd never heard or I never comprehended the idea that what God wants from us is relationship and it's not legalistic means necessarily. So it's more along the lines that God wants to have relationship. Once you have that relationship, he transforms your heart and your mind to where you start to naturally gravitate towards these things. Yeah. It's not a legalistic do these things. It's that God will change your heart to where you just naturally want to gravitate towards that.
We talked today. Our good friend Greg Newmeyer shared this with us too, and it's been really working on my mind. We typically either bond to God out of fear or out of joy, one or the other, and those are two kind of key bonds. And I've been really processing. And Greg, just so you know, these words have stuck in my mind, and I am really like pastorally and just in my relationships and conversations, because I hear that again and again where it's like if you experience, and this is what I almost love. I don't even know how to say this correctly without it coming across wrong, but. For those of us that have been, we were 3 years old and we asked Jesus into our heart and it's just sort of progressed through that time. That's a beautiful and wonderful thing. And that is an avenue by which we come into faith. And I 100%, like, absolutely. There's the other side of the story, though, of a lot of more life passing on and then us making the connection to faith. And it seems like for so many people that I know, good friends of mine, that make a faith connection later in life or come back to something in kind of a new richness or new fullness, they already understand. They don't need to be fear-mongered into faith. And I'm not saying that every kid is, but often children, it's very easy, if we're not intentional, for children to make a fear bond to God. I need to do XYZ things in order to keep God happy or to or heck, to make my religious community happy, whatever, and so, and kids are very perceptive to that sort of thing, where X behavior equals X acceptance, that kind of thing. In your situation, from what I'm hearing, it's a like, oh, I get to be part of this relationship, and from this relationship, I experience transformation, and there's a joy. So there's a joy bond that happens there specifically, and I think that can just, I don't know, there is something just really unique about coming to that realization of better to be connected to God by joy, because that is the relationship that He desires with us, that we would find our fullness that way, versus fear, versus a works-based or legalistic, or however you want to say it. So just to take the quick exit ramp there to say, I think that in of itself is just a powerful thing to point out and to acknowledge, that you were able to experience that in the midst of all this change, that was going on. So,
and like I say, that was the only thing that saved me.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that saved us. So again, if it hadn't been for God coming into or I should say me allowing God into my life at that point, it would have been very much a different story. I wouldn't be here telling you any of the story. Because honestly, I probably would, who knows, dead or in jail, who knows? Or
do you feel like that was very much the track that you were on?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Like, what was it? How was it? My brother said that before we accept Christ, we live under His mercy.
Yeah,
I think it is how he phrased it. And then afterward, we live under His grace.
Yeah.
And man, God is just so merciful, because I can tell you time after time where things should have went very much south.
Yeah.
And when I think back to those times now, I just can't even believe like that should be in a movie, because there's no way that in real life it should go down that way. So absolutely, it wasn't until, and again, like shortly before I met Manessa, I started, I had made some decisions that like, hey, things got to change. This isn't working. But I was prepared to do it on my own. And I can tell you what my strength was and still is, and it's not very much. So who knows how long that would have lasted? Who knows what would have happened from that point? I'm glad I didn't have to find out. I can tell you that.
So what is it like? Because Manessa herself is, again, as I said, she's also kind of awakening to this life of faith and all of that. And so the two of you are trying to come together in a new marriage and a new relationship, and you're inviting the work of God to come also in, and two people that have lived lives to this point. And Andy, I just cannot imagine like you and I, like that's just such a different reality. You and I living single life into like up to this point, like it would be impossible to live. I feel like it would be impossible to live with me.
Me too.
Like if there had not been an early interception by another person in my life to calm me down in all the right ways. I
agree. Same thing here. Same thing here.
Like so that in of itself. Just feeling like the kind of were you a little disoriented? Let's just.
Oh, absolutely. That's a pretty good word for it. Disoriented, phased, lost. Yeah.
So what did you guys do? Because you're also marrying a therapist, and that's a interesting. Like, I just want to know when Manessa the therapist enters into the relationship, how that all balances out. Because it's just like we're human beings. There's a lot of junk that has to be dealt with, and new expectations and. A family direction. Like how did you guys get your bearings and take steps forward?
I'd love to say we did it very gracefully. Yeah. Not probably the case. So we struggled. It was difficult. It was really difficult. So we were both very independent people.
Which I could imagine being, single for that long too. Like you are independent and you're an adult, whereas like Joel and I, who got married fairly young,
We gave up our independence long
well, I mean, we were we barely were moved out of our parents' house before we moved
that is
into
correct.
Right,
with
yeah.
our wives. So
Yep. Yeah.
It's difficult. You have to and it does make you independent. You worry about yourself. You say, hey, self, I want to do this. Can I do? Absolutely. You should do it. Yeah. You don't get that as much once you get married. There's a lot of stubbornness and pride. I mean, pride is a big killer, I think, probably in marriages. And I'm no therapist, but I'll just tell you, like, pride was probably the hardest thing to get past, dare I say, for both of us, but least of all for myself. And there's a lot of that, one of the things that Bill and I went through, the very first thing we did was we went through a book series called Everyman Warrior by Lonnie Berger, I believe. Great tool. And one of the things, once we got into the book that dealt with marriage, which I was very much interested because I was very much thinking I would marry this woman while we were going through this book, and death to self was a big topic in a whole chapter in that book. And I thought, man, yeah, that's right. Now, the difference between knowledge and wisdom,
Yes.
right? Knowledge is knowing something and wisdom is actually doing it.
Sure.
And that's two very different ends of the spectrum there. You can know all kinds of stuff,
Yep.
but I mean, I know all kinds of stuff, but most of it I don't do.
You can, well, and this is something, I come to again and again, and my counseling work, my coaching work, all of that. To put it another way, there's a difference between insight into something and then the transformation from that insight, right?
Absolutely.
There's two, and we love knowledge. We love just that dopamine rush of like having a new insight or understanding to something, whatever. The fact of the matter is though, when you have an understanding of something, jack squat has changed in your life. Nothing has actually changed.
True.
Just you had a biochemical reaction in your brain. That's what you had. Now, if you take that experience and actually act upon it, now we're cooking with gas, right? And I think that's the kicker, is that we can hear a lot of things, we can learn a lot of things, but like, show me your life. Show me where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's 100%. That's it right there. Is you can know as much as you want to know, but if you don't implement it, it does absolutely nothing for you.
And then you're deceiving yourself too.
Oh, sure, yeah,
which is a double whammy.
Right. So, and that's one of those things. I'm a knowledge. I love to learn things. I don't always as much love to implement them, right? Because
Sure.
let's be honest, it's
hard.
It's not always
Yeah.
easy.
It's work. It's hard work.
And it means giving up. It means giving up some things sometimes. And the whole, it's just funny because if I'd have written a book about, because of course I was an expert on kids and marriage,
100%.
I mean, I was a single guy for 30 something years. I got it all figured out, right? If I'd have written a book on what I perceived into those two facets of life, opposed to what I know now, quote unquote, maybe what I think I know, they would be vastly different books. And new Justin would be slapping old Justin in the face saying, buddy, you don't know anything. But yeah, I mean, pride was a big thing to get over, and we're still not completely over that. I mean, we won't have perfected anything on this side of heaven, right? But that was probably one of our biggest hurdles that contributed to a lot.
My the one other question that I do just want to ask here toward the end is, so when, and this has to do, I think, with Lucas too in this whole process, because you're developing a relationship with two different, because you've married both people, right? Like this is a all in deal. What has, because you kind of talked about it some, but I wonder, the building of trust, and now that Lucas, and I hope if Lucas listens to this, like Lucas is entering into this adolescent stage of life, and like we said, I got a 12-year-old boy right now, and I'm having this experience of I don't know which 12-year-old I'm going to get on any given day. It's a lot of ups and downs. what has for you as the non-biological father, right? As the adoptive father, what has been the biggest challenge to you in that relationship to this point? And then what would you say are, because we want to name it, some wins or some breakthroughs or things that you're maybe even right now. I mean, it's a process, and I get that. That you're doing to build in that relationship, because I think it translates to all of our fathering.
Sure, yeah.
Across the board, but your situation being what it is, I'd just be interested in seeing what you've learned.
Well, I think the biggest challenge is that Lucas, and let me just premise this by saying, like, Manessa, for a single mom, has done an amazing job.
Rock
like
star.
Lucas, yeah, absolute rock star. Like, Lucas was already an amazing kid when I met him, and it blows my mind because I was raised by two parents. I don't know. I mean, well, separately,
Sure,
right? Like,
yep.
I mean, they split up when I was pretty young, but I still had both of my life, and I don't know if I was that cool when I was 12, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure I was not.
High praise, Lucas.
No,
Nice.
the kid is amazing. He's such an awesome kid, but you have essentially one person that's raised this kid with one parenting style. Coming into it, you're kind of like, you're kind of blind. You just kind of come in and you're like, well, this is what I think needs to happen. And that's where, like, kind of the whole drill sergeant thing came in, and then, and it doesn't work. And one thing that I want, probably more than a lot of things, is for someday I want Lucas to be to that point where he's like, something's bugging me. I'm just going to go tell dad about it and just go see what he has to say. And unsolicited advice, I mean, that's really hard because I want to help. I want the kid to learn. I want to help him. But the bottom line is that if he's not asking, he probably doesn't want to know, and it's probably not going to be well received. Right. And so I think that was one of my battles, is like, look, I don't have to lecture the kid, and praise Manessa for pointing this out so gracefully many, many times when this has happened. But the bottom line is I just had to stop lecturing the kid, And it's funny because a very good friend of mine who leads the men's group that we do on Tuesday nights, he just texted me random one day, as he does, and he just said, do you spend more time connecting or correcting with Lucas?
Ooh, come
and
on.
I thought, man.
Yeah.
Like, I know the answer, Matt, but I'm not going to tell you because it's not,
Ouch.
And that's a tough one. And that's, to answer the second part of that question, I think that is the, one of my quote unquote triumphs that is still in process, is like connecting with him, not lecturing the kid, not just like, if you listen to Focus on the Family for any length of time, you probably already heard the episodes on the different descriptions of parents. And one of them is the one that uses everything as lesson, right? That's me. I'm just like, well, there's a lesson to be learned here. Let me just sit down. We got 60 minutes, let me just explain to you the lesson to be learned. And it doesn't need to be that way. He's a very smart, intuitive kid. And I think that once I started to give him that credit, I realized, some things he's going to figure out on his own. And maybe I need to do a better job at leading by example than being like a professor to this kid. And
so many times it does feel it's just like it's more of a deal with our own insecurity and our own like if I don't do this, I'm not being good. And doggone it, kids are perceptive. They pick up on so many things. And I'm going to be a parent. I'm not here just to be a buddy or whatever. I'm going to be a parent. But I am going to walk alongside of my kid and journey with them. And I just appreciate what you're doing, the intentionality. I'm excited to see just what God has done in your life and your life as a couple. It's for me as a pastor, it's one of those things where I'm like, yes, doggone it, these things still do happen, and God does work in lives, and because many days, for every marriage that I see that is growing through hardship, there's also the flip side, right? Of where it just, especially here in this recent season, it just felt like so many things are in peril or disintegrating, and people are struggling with hope. And so I hope that people that are hearing your guys' story, number one, get a little boost of hope from it. That
I hope too. I hope
Yeah.
I made some good points and didn't ramble too much.
no,
good.
no, Justin likes to talk, and that's helpful for the show. So we got things.
Yeah, we do. We
got
do.
things.
So thank you for being on, but we cannot let you go without.
Now it's time for the Dudes and Dads Pop Quiz.
All right. So those of you who have never joined us on this show ever,
First of all, get with it.
well, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. All
yeah.
right, thanks for listening.
We do what's called the pop quiz, which we have this deck of cards that we just pull questions out of and ask our guests. And
I hope I get like a really morbid question.
I got one right here.
Go
All
for
right.
it.
So what's your greatest regret?
My greatest regret. Wow. I think my greatest regret in life was, this might be cliche, but I think it's just the fact that I waited so long to just change my life and give it to God. I mean, it's been a complete transformation and a 180 from who I used to be. However, I will just say very quickly that I'm also a firm believer that had I lived a different life, I wouldn't have the same mindset or the same experiences to have transformed me either.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting. It's a real interesting relationship we have with our past. Yikes. Justin, what do you value most in your friends?
Ooh. Honesty. I think honesty would have to be number one. If your friends can't be honest with you, are they really your friends, right? And that's a two-way street. You got to just be transparent.
By the way, Andy, I've been meaning to. No, I'm kidding.
You see how he segued into that? Like, hey, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. And
We have to talk after this
got
show.
a therapist husband here to kind of.
Once we get off air, go ahead.
Dang. Wow. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
Ooh. Wow, that is a tough one. You know, my dad gave me a lot of advice growing up, and I listened to probably 5% of it. But I think, honestly, you know, I'm going to go back to this again. I think the best piece of advice that I've been given is to have a relationship with Jesus.
Come on.
Awesome.
If you were to die, and not, by the way, this is not.
If you were going to die, like, I mean, eventually you're going to.
If you were to die under a certain condition here,
Okay.
I just want to preface this by saying this is not an endorsement of any alternative theological perspective that has not been previously introduced on this show.
I don't even know what that means.
Here we go. If you were to die and come back as a person or a thing, now you understand why I'm saying this. What do you think it would be? If you were to die and come back as a person or a thing, what do you think it would be? Oh boy.
Well, that's a tough one. So what do I think it would be based on like a karmic kind of philosophy?
Yeah, right.
What you want to come back is?
Well-
I don't know. I mean,
And that's just it is would you? And no, absolutely I wouldn't. What do I think I'd come back as? I'd like to think, you know, a very handsome man
There we go.
with a full head of hair.
Full head of hair,
And a
but
nice
also
beard.
And the
full,
beard.
full beard.
Yeah.
and a very nice beard. Yes.
Rock it out both ways.
all right. So my last card is: which living person do you admire the most?
Oh, I knew I was going to get this. You know, and this is one I really struggled with. I listened to you guys' show enough to kind of get a feel for,
Yep.
you know, this part of it. And I don't know, honestly, it's hard. It's hard to say one person. That's what it is. And I'd just give a shout out to three quick people.
Sure.
My wife, absolutely.
Good answer.
My brother and my son.
Well,
I thought he was going to say the
he's-
Father,
Father,
Son,
Son,
and Holy Spirit.
Father's Holy Pantry, Spirit
No.
Saint. Justin, what technology do you wish existed?
Now, this is another good one. You know, Lucas and I have these conversations all the time when we're driving. And we actually were talking about this the other day about technology that isn't there. And I think flying cars, would be pretty sick.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty great.
People like the flying cars, absolutely. Well, hey, Justin, buddy, thanks for coming out, hanging out. We hope this experience has been helpful to you as well. And all Andy and I ask is that one of us are your first guest on the show. That you're gonna
Yeah,
send
fair
over.
enough. Thanks for having me.
But yeah, thanks for sharing your story. Friends, as always, you can get in touch with us over at dudesanddadspodcast@gmail.com.
Or once again, 574-213-8702 is our phone number, and we love to hear your voice.
We do love to hear your voice, especially if you talk deep and slow. Guys, thanks for your support. Thanks for tuning in. We just want to continue to bring you excellent episodes. And Andy, by the way, we're approaching the 15,000 download mark. So listen, share and like. We're going to celebrate. We're going to do something fun. We'll celebrate when we hit the mark. But guys, thanks for tuning in. And as always, we wish you grace
and peace.
Like what we do? Share this on your socials and tell everyone.